This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Revival of America podcast. This is Jenny. I am the owner and the host of the Revival of America. Today, everybody, we have Josh Reid in the house, so I'd like to give him a warm welcome. If you guys have any questions for him, feel free to request a mic. We will unmute your mic and pop you up here on stage so you can talk to Mr. Josh. Also, to everybody, We are being listened to in over 100 countries. So if you come into this podcast late or you would like to share it with somebody, feel free to follow the podcast hosts on the podcast hosts, which are iHeartRadio, Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Google, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Podbean, Riverside, Amazon Music. Also, the social medias are Jenny JERREAD Facebook, at Jenny_JERREAD X, at JJERREAD Rumble, at JJERREAD True Social, at JJERREAD Instagram, The Revival of America over on Telegram, and then The Revival of America on YouTube. So you can see I'm not too hard to find. But yes, everybody, please check those out, guys, because a lot of people want to know where they can find the replay or where they can send it to a family or friend. So please go follow one of those locations if you come in here late. So Josh, I'm going to send you the co-host, and if you want to accept that, go for it. So yes, hi Jersey, hi Silent, how are you? Hello Sergeant. Yeah, so anybody and all of you that want to ask Josh a question or myself, please feel free to come on up, and we will unmute your mic. Also, too, if you don't mind reposting the space, get some more people in here because Mr. Josh is a wealth of information. And if you guys aren't following Josh or Alpha Warrior or many of the guests that I have on, you really should, because they are spot on with their information and they are legitimate truthers giving you real information, not fake information, and pretending to be a fake MAGA supporter. They are legit, everybody. So definitely check them out and give them a follow. Hello, Josh. How are you?
I'm good. How we doing?
I am doing fantastic. I'm glad to have you on. I so apologize. Last week it was hectic. It's like Thanksgiving came and went. I don't even know where the hell it went. It was such a fog. It was great, but it like went like in a snap. So I apologize for that.
It's all good. No worries. Happy to be here with y'all.
Well, we're happy to have you here, and as I always say, and I tell my audience, you and so many are out there killing it with the information that's being put out there, and it's coming out so fast, it's hard to keep up with. But I think, for me and with my audience, it's really key right now and it's always been right, but through the movement, people are trying to find their way, and who can they trust, who can they follow? We've all been kind of all over the place, right? But it is, I think, very key right now for people to pay attention to who they're listening to, who they follow, and what they're putting into their minds, because there is so much bullshit being put out there, as well as the fear that I'm telling you, Josh. Some of this fear that I'm hearing, it could be absolutely terrifying for those that are just coming into the movement or just trying to find out information. So I just want, and you can probably back me up on this, that wouldn't you agree that it's like imperative who people who they're following and what they're putting into their mind, paying attention to that?
Well, let me start off by giving my philosophy. Is firstly, when I created the Red Pill project, I understood exactly what you're talking about right now, and I created a motto. And the motto is my philosophy on kind of how I look at everything. Think about it like this: is never believe anything anybody tells you, no matter who they are or what authority they possess or profess, unless you can prove it through your own inquiry, your own investigation, through your own research, and with your own volition. And that is so critically important. And I'm not going to tell people who to listen to or who to watch or who to follow, because that's just not my style. But my perspective is you should listen to everybody that has any type of relevance. And the reason is because we are piecing together a narrative, an understanding of what is unfolding before us. And not all of us have the answers, but a lot of us have certain pieces of the puzzle. And so we have to use discernment and discretion when we start to put all of that together, when it pertains to the information war and the kind of the silent war that's going on. I mean, if I was going to tell people who to follow, I mean, follow me, listen to me. I mean, that's great, but don't believe everything I say, because it might not all be true and accurate. And that just comes about because we're dealing with OSINT, open source intelligence. We're dealing with, contacts and connections that we have that are maybe in the military or in the intelligence community or in Washington, D.C. And sometimes it's not fully accurate, right? So, and sometimes it's hints and clues to where we're trying to put together what we believe is happening based upon the information that we have. And, I mean, Alpha and myself, we have some very high level information that we put out there and really good analysis. And when I start to listen to other people out there, and I do listen to a few other podcasts, not podcasts, but shows and podcasts, and I try to put it all together by kind of navigating all of that information, is I realize that even the people that have millions of subscribers or hundreds of thousands of subscribers, they don't have any bit more to the puzzle than we do. But I mean, on the other side, going into it, Jenny, you know this, is there are grifters out there. There are people who are taking advantage of the situation for purely monetary purposes. And it's easy to kind of circumnavigate that. Honestly, if there's no substantiation to evidence other than speculation or trust me, bro, then there's probably no legitimacy to what they're saying. On top of that, one of the big things that I've seen within these communities is a misinterpretation and understanding of fact, right? So people go out there all the time and they misinterpret executive orders or laws, or they misinterpret, Trump's what Trump's saying, or what Scott Bessent's saying, or what Hegseth is saying. And that can draw a lot of deviating parallels that give the people the wrong impression. Now, is it my job to tell you who those people are, or who to follow and who not to follow? No, I could give two shits. To me, it's about the information. As I look at all levels of information, and I try to keep my audience on the straight and narrow. And we've done a good job. We've been fairly accurate on kind of the narrative that's unfolding. Been wrong about a lot of things. Been right about a ton of things. So I cherish that in the context that we're giving people real legitimate information, real time information of the unfolding narrative, but as well as we're building those high levels of trust.
Amen. Amen to that. And I have to 100% agree with you on that. You guys are giving great information. And again, it's like Josh says, and I say it to my my audience all the time. Don't believe it because I say it. Go do your own research, right?
Right. And one part about the research aspect of it is, if Jenny says, hey, go check out, Donald Trump's newest executive order, it says this in there. Don't just go validate what it says. Go in there and dig deeper to why it says that. What it says and what that means. The laws and the regulations pertaining to that, how those laws and regulations came about. We have to look at all aspects. We have to look at, kind of the legal precedent of why things are happening the way they happen. Number one is right now with the Seditious Six, and then going into these claims about Hegseth and the Pentagon and killing innocent, survivors. This is a load of bullshit. And if you understand the rules of engagement, if you understand Trump's executive orders declaring them foreign terrorist organizations, and you start to look at this from a different perspective, there are certain laws that wrap around what legal framework that Trump is bringing in to do what he's doing, whether it's Trump or whether it's Hegseth. And so one of the key points there is the 2001 AUMF, authorized use of military force. This is key and clutch after the determination is made that an organization is a foreign terrorist organization. Then you have like the doctrine of irregular warfare, 3000.07. You have national security presidential memorandum, specifically number 6 and number 7. These provide the legal war power framework for Donald Trump to do what he's doing without needing congressional oversight. Congress has already been briefed in classified settings on all of this. And what's going on right now in Venezuela, I think, is actually much deeper than just
Bigger,
much darker, much deeper than just narcotics. But what we have to understand is there is a legal framework involved, and this legal framework allows the DOD to kill terrorists. And just to kind of give you my professional tactical point of view, is when you have a 20 to 25 foot fiberglass skiff, and kind of that's what these are, these speedboats, these go fast with 4 outboard motors that's filled with diesel fuel on top and cocaine in the hull, and you hit it with 1, 2, or 3 20-pound ordinances from a MQ-9 Reaper, there are no survivors. I want people to understand that. There are no survivors. Imagine a Hellfire missile striking 10 feet by you. You're dead. There's no surviving that. And if they claim that there are survivors, the only way that's really possible is if it hit the front end of the ship. And I mean, the person would be concussed, knocked out. But is it possible? Highly unlikely, but probable. Now, if there was survivors, here's the thing: is these people are armed on board these ships, on board these vessels. So you have an armed combatant at that point in time. So the whole legal framework that they're trying to organize around Trump and saying that these are fishermen and all this is just psychological warfare operations. This is just propaganda by the left to try to remove pieces of Donald Trump's cabinet away from him. So keep that in mind, because this is the real psychological warfare. It's not a coincidence that the Seditious Six came out a week before this news story dropped on the Washington Post. I mean, that was done for a reason, specifically for this reason.
So let's talk about that seditious six, because obviously you're former military. I do believe their rhetoric coming out with is, we're seeing that right now with the National Guard, the two that unfortunately got shot, and then just the rhetoric we're seeing on the streets. I think they're trying to push obviously the disconnect, the disruption, the fear out there for people. Do you want to kind of touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot more, I think, going on with what the Seditious Six were actually doing, and they're continuing to do it today.
And a coup,
So
the coup, right, against Pete Hegseth. Sorry about that.
it's not even against Pete Hegseth. I mean, this is directed towards junior military enlisted in officers. And let me give you an example. Alexander Vindman. Everybody remembers Alexander Vindman. He was the whistleblower in the Perfect Phone Call with Zelensky. Right, used Adam Schiff at the Gang of Eight to leak the classified information to the news media. Eric Ciccarella, a part of the National Security Council, was involved in this. Direct John Brennan protege, CIA type Eric Ciccarella, and Alexander Vindman, who is actually from Ukraine but was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. He's now retired United States Army. He came out yesterday and said it's totally okay to disobey the President of the United States and Commander in Chief if he's issuing illegal orders. In fact, it is your duty to disobey, and failure to do so will have you prosecuted. Clearly, patently illegal orders issued by President Donald Trump include shooting peaceful protesters in the leg and murdering civilians in boats. Now, I'm going to break this down real quick for people. Shooting peaceful protesters in the leg was during January 6th, or it was around the time that there was protests around 2020. Now, this was something that was Milley and others said that Trump said, but other people in the cabinet came out and said, no, that was bullshit. Never happened. So that never happened. Number two is murdering civilians in boats. These aren't civilians. They're enemy combatants. The moment that they got on that board that those fishing skiffs, those go fast, they knew exactly what they were doing and the consequences of their actions. So it's bullshit to think that these were fishermen or civilians, because they weren't. But what's really important about Vindman's post here is he says that it's totally okay to disobey the President of the United States and Commander in Chief if he's issuing illegal orders. Let me break this down for people. Number one is Lieutenant Colonel retired Vindman should be recalled back to active duty and immediately court-martialed for what he did. He's in direct violation of 18 U.S.C. 2387, as well as multiple UCMJ articles, including 88, 92, 94, which is mutiny and sedition, 133, and general articles. I'm going to read what I wrote to him in reply. So the assessment overlooks something very fundamental about how the U.S. military functions. Orders from the president do not go straight to an E4 or a platoon commander. There's a long chain of legal and operational review before anything reaches the tactical level. When the commander-in-chief issues an order, it moves through the National Security Council and the White House General Counsel, the Secretary of Defense and the Department of Defense General Counsel. It can move through the Joint Chiefs of Staff and operational and legal review. It can move through combatant commander lawyers and judge advocate generals. It goes through service level commands and staff attorneys. By the time that order reaches a lieutenant, a captain, a non-commissioned officer on the ground, it has been vetted by dozens of military and civilian legal authorities whose explicit job is to prevent unlawful orders from being transmitted. To publicly encourage junior service members to disobey the president after an order is passed through that entire legal chain is not protecting our country or our republic. It is undermining the chain of command, eroding discipline, and creating dangerous hesitation in life and death situations. This is about the basic mechanics that prevent the U.S. military from fracturing. If you bypass the chain of command and tell enlisted and junior officers to personally reinterpret them, second guess, or refuse orders that have already been cleared at the highest levels, you create a national security threat, not a safeguard. These comments that he made, as well as Mark Kelly and others, they're reckless and they're illegal. The reason being is because they're not giving these out there to the Secretary of Defense or the generals or the colonels or the lawyers that are operating in the Pentagon. They're giving these orders out there. They're telling these to disobey illegal orders from the President of the United States to enlisted service members, the junior members of the military who are out there on the ground actually executing orders from the officers appointed above them. This is so critical to the fabric of how the military operates. Everything is detail orientation around the orders given to you by your chain of command. Everything goes through your chain of command. By the time an E4 and E5 or E6 receives orders from their superiors, those orders from the superiors have came down through, a colonel above them, through a general or an admiral above them, from the Pentagon above them. They have cleared multiple layers of approval by the time that they're reaching those enlisted sailors, soldiers, airmen, or guardians, or any NCO. So that blatantly say this is undermining the fabric of the United States military. It's putting lives in danger because you got to imagine if you're on a battlefield and you're in an engagement situation and you get direct orders to engage a hostile enemy and someone stops and thinks about that and says, I don't agree with these politically. I don't think that we should be here. And they abandon their post and they take off or they just stop engaging. People are going to die because of that. This is the reckless nature of the comments that they made. And these people need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law because what they are trying to do is undermine the authority of Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, the Pentagon, military leaders and commanders, and the overall infrastructure of the U.S. military. Now, there's a good reason why they're doing this. Obviously, you had the Washington Post article that came out, and obviously that bears some significance here because the timing of that was not a coincidence, right? That you have basically they're proclaiming that Hegseth gave illegal orders, right? And now they're going to try to prosecute them, congressional investigations. But really, what this is ramping up for is that we know that there's an insurgency existing within our country. We know that we've been infiltrated by over 23 million illegal immigrants over the course of 4 to 5 years. That among those 23 million illegal immigrants that came into our country are Tren de Aragua, our Cartel de los Soles, Sinaloa cartel, Mexican, South American cartels, various terrorist organizations from Afghanistan, Yemen, all throughout the Middle East, Hezbollah, Unit 912. We know Todd Bensman testified in front of Congress in 2022 talking about how Texas Border Control had well over 5,000 members of Hezbollah Unit 912 flagged as they came over the border, and they were told by the Biden administration to let them go through. Hezbollah Unit 912 is like their special operations division trained directly by the IRGC. You have Hamas, you have Hezbollah, you have ISIS. These people came over the border, not including the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Chinese military-age males that came over. So we have a direct national security threat sitting within the confines of our own country. So at some point in time, if this does kick off, if this does happen, you could see the Insurrection Act come into play. And if the insurrection comes into play, well, who's getting deployed? It's junior soldiers and sailors and airmen and guardians. It's the E4s, the E5s, the E6s, the NCOs, the lieutenants, the captains. This is who's getting deployed. And if these people have doubt in their mind about the orders that they're given, well, that basically erodes the fabric of what the military is based upon, and can be a very, very dire situation for the national security of the United States of America, where lives can be lost, both civilian and military, especially in those types of situations.
So, Josh, in your opinion, I mean, because we know what Trump is doing, and his cabinet meeting was amazing yesterday. For those of you that didn't watch it, I highly suggest you watch it. But moving forward with everything that you just said, with all this, all these illegals and everything, the threats that are within. What do you think this looks like? Because I am, I'm hearing people out there, they're literally putting so much fear out there. I mean, like terror, like they're like terror in the sense of like, these terrorists are going to go door to door, and they're going to kill you and your family, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's horrifying. I mean, we're trying to get through this, and stay positive, obviously realistic, but positive. But I mean, that's terrifying for those people that are on the fence, just new into trying to figure out what's going on in the world, just kind of waking up, right? I mean, when somebody comes to you with that kind of stuff, because that's the kind of stuff that's being put out there. I do believe that Trump is always 100 steps ahead of these people. So he has to know that these threats obviously are a threat, and is aware of it. And that, because he is so many steps ahead of these people, that, he will do what he needs to do to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we've had indications that there's no 4D or 5D chess. Marjorie Taylor Greene said there's no 5D chess. General Michael Flynn came out and said there's no 4D chess. Elfa and I had General Michael Flynn on last week. And one of the first things he said is there is no plan. And I love this, because what it should do is light a fire under your ass. The idea that there is no plan, that Trump is basically shooting from the hip, that he's surrounded by snakes, the people around him that are keeping intel and information from him. I hope that this motivates the American people, because at the end of the day, we have a dilemma within MAGA, right? And this is the one thing that I need everybody to understand, because this is the message that I'm getting from people around me, from people I know. And it fits into what you're saying there, is that, we know Trump is taking certain actions to deter China, or the MI6, or whatever intelligence apparatus is at work, or Venezuela, or Iran, or stopping the curtail the insurgency that's in our country, by neutralizing everybody else economically, with tariffs, with military, military. The military surrounding their country, or whatever it might be. We've talked about this at extent. But the other side of it is the American people. And we have what I call the MAGA dilemma. One of the most destructive forces in American politics has always been sycophantic loyalty. The blind, unquestioning allegiance that marked not only the Obama and the Bush era, but also every administration where personality eclipsed principle. The mindset is fundamentally at odds with what the founders envisioned. Parties were never meant to be tribes, Republican or Democrat, were never meant to override citizen judgment. A constitutional republic requires constant civic pressure, not passive agreement. If the people do not speak, the system will speak for them. If citizens do not assert their voice, the system speaks for them. The American system is built to preserve its own momentum, not because of one man, not because of one administration, but because of the two broad power structures that have evolved over the decades. Number one is the lobby, a coalition of multinational corporations, foreign interests, institutional networks, financial powers, and ideological pressure blocks. They operate with money, influence, leverage, and access. The other one is the people. The vast majority of Americans whose influence comes from participation in government, the only force powerful enough to counter institutional drift. For 60 years, the lobby has been the group that has exerted pressure relentlessly. The other has spoken out loudly at moments, but rarely sustained unified strategic force. This is why people often find themselves angry at individual political figures for decisions they disagree with. Yet the broader system remains unchanged. Outrage without organization is noise. Outrage without structure doesn't translate into pressure. Outrage without coordination cannot overcome institutional inertia. Across the political spectrum, there are citizens who express disillusionment with certain political decisions. This raises an uncomfortable truth. Has the public allowed institutions to define their movements, their values, and even their expectations? If the public believes an issue is critical, yet there is no coordinated civic pressure, no organized campaign, no widespread collective demand, then the system continues on its default trajectory. Institutional behavior doesn't shift because of sentiment, it shifts because of force. All civic, economic, informational, political. When a government official remains in power despite broad dissatisfaction, one explanation is structural. Institutions respond to organized influence, not scattered frustration. When certain advisors or bureaucratic actors wield more authority than expected, it reflects the gap between institutional power and civic pressure. Every administration, there are staffers, advisors, operatives who shape processes behind the scenes. Their influence grows when public oversight shrinks. Their decisions carry weight when civic pressure is absent. This phenomenon is not tied to one party, it's structural. The recurring problem is not that Americans disagree with political decisions. It's Americans often express discontent without sustained organization that creates civic leverage. This is the one area where many people note a clear asymmetry between the Republicans and Democrats. The Democrats have mastered social organization, collective messaging, unified demands, coordinated action, narrative pressure. The Republicans remain fragmented, passionate, but decentralized, loud, but not structurally aligned. In a republic, the system does not move because people complain. The system moves because people organize. The moment any large civic movement, left, right, or otherwise, learns to unify its voice, articulate clear expectations, and sustain pressure, the entire architecture of the American power responds. It always has. People rediscover their authority the moment they recognize that silence is not neutrality, it is surrender. Now, let me add on to this. What I'm talking about here is, as a unified community just on X, we've canceled Budweiser. We've canceled Target, Cracker Barrel. To the point of Cracker Barrel, we had the President of the United States demanding that they revert their stores back. But let me ask you this, is how many people are demanding, more declassification, the arrest of Hillary Clinton in a unified, and what I mean is in a unified voice, in an organized campaign, because I know we're all calling for arrests, but we're not doing it in a unified voice. We're not writing our congressmen, writing our senators, putting the pressure on Donald Trump to force his hand. That's what is required in a constitutional republic. That is the power. If we go back to, Donald Trump's 2016 acceptance speech, he says that we are removing the power from the corrupt bureaucrats and we are giving it back to the American people. Well, the question is are the American people capable of handling that power? And we're being tested and tried with this day in and day out. It is our job, it is our duty to organize and produce the civic pressure out there to get what we want out of our elected officials. They're elected officials, and when we speak up in a unified accord, they listen. Corporations listen. Why the hell wouldn't the government
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
listen? And the Epstein files is a great example of this, and I believe that Donald Trump played a lot of 4D chess with this. But he knew that he couldn't go out there and release the Epstein files and order the direction of that, because a lot of people in the global community, whether powerful, whether donors, whether people in government already or world leaders, would be implicated in them. So he had to use proxy methodologies. One of those proxy methods was Elon Musk coming out and saying Trump's in the Epstein files. That created a massive organization within the left. And the left began demanding it. The left began going out there and campaigning for it, calling their politicians and saying that these records need to be released. So all the politicians on the left came and started following in suit, to the point where Congress passed an almost unanimous bill to release these Epstein files, and Donald Trump signed it willingly, gladly. That's the type of civic pressure that we need to do when we want people like Susie Wiles removed from the White House, when we want Pam Bondi to get off her ass and arrest people, when we have 4 different grand juries impaneled in 4 different states and we're not seeing any indictments. This is what we need to do when SCOTUS is going to have a big decision on whether Donald Trump's tariffs are legal or illegal. We need to produce that civic pressure and go out there because that's our part of the job. This is what it was all about. This is what taking back the domain of information was all about. It was about waking us up to the point, to the realization of our own power within the constitutional republic. That we have a constitutional republic and we are just as much a part of the government as Congress, Senate, and the executive branch. And that we, the people, need to stand up, step up, make our voices loud. We got to stay organized. We got to put that civic pressure on our politicians and force in order to have them do our will.
Yeah, wow. I agree with you 100%. And, this is why a lot of people, we talk about getting local, right? Also too, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, there's just so much going on. I mean, in your opinion, you're saying that MTG, no 45D chess, and General Flynn said that. But I think MTG, we have a lot of useful idiots out there, right? Like what was her part? What's her agenda, right? Where do you think moving forward? Are you feeling comfy and cozy? I mean, RT News reported, I think it's a Russian news, I don't know, but they reported that China, Russia, and the U.S. they enhance their technological, economic, and military dominance while they left Europe behind. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, that's what Kushner and what is it, Witkoff or Mitkoff is over there. They're over there with these meetings. I mean, that's a positive thing, right?
Well, what's interesting about Wyckoff, and Kushner being in Russia is they're there at the exact same time that Li Wang, the second premier of China, is actually there meeting with Russian defense ministers. This is the second in charge in China meeting with the highest ranking military members about their defense cooperation agreements in Russia. At the same time, Kushner and Wyckoff are talking about peace. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it depends on the perspective. We can look at it in two different ways. We can look at it that, China is flexing their muscles towards the United States of America, that Russia's off limits and owned by them. That is one perspective to look at it with. On the other side is that there could be secret meetings going on by the three major superpowers in the world about something that could be unfolding here in Venezuela, that there could be coordination actually occurring, right? And here's the thing is we don't know. That's the unfortunate part. We don't know. But
Damn it.
But optically, I think that there's not a coincidence that all three of them were there at that point in time, China, Russia, and the United States, and that there was cross collaboration. I think that there are messages being sent and coordinated between them. And I think that comes down to something that we're seeing evolve right now in Venezuela. If people look at Venezuela, one thing you hear Donald Trump saying is any moment now, it's going to happen, any moment now. Well, that's the psychological warfare of Donald Trump. That's his 4D chess. He's trying to get the bad actors to make a move. He wants them to think that he's appearing weak, right? We got all this political pressure and that is coming down on him and Hegseth about their bombing campaigns on drug vessels, and Donald Trump, he's got Marjorie Taylor Greene leaving and MAGA's fracturing, and people are calling for people to be fired in his cabinet. That's appearing weak, but in actuality, he's really strong. And Maduro, we saw Maduro today actually cave, and Maduro is going to begin accepting their illegal immigrants back into Venezuela. This is huge because from what I gathered is that Trump was on the phone call last week, and this has been Trump's demand from Maduro since the beginning, is that Maduro needs to start accepting their illegal immigrants back into their country, but also all the intel pertaining to their migration and potential whereabouts in the United States needs to be transmitted as well. And so I'm assuming that is occurring at the same time, because we also have a lot of other things that are coming out. The Joe Biden administration, $350 million embezzled to Venezuelan generals to start the migration process of bringing their prisoners over to the United States. Like, this is huge. This is sedition and treason at the highest levels. And so you have to be very careful when you're treading in that territory. And I think that Donald Trump is playing this long game with Maduro because he knows that he can implement that pressure on Maduro. And Maduro is just a puppet for anybody out there who doesn't realize it. That Maduro knows that if he leaves Venezuela, he will find himself in American prison very fast. That if he extradites to Russia, he'll find himself in American prison. He extradites to China, he'll find himself in American prison. That no matter what he does, he's most likely going to be a dead man. And so he has to stick with the puppet masters that are playing him. But it's coming to the point where, as a leader of a nation, he has to make a decision. He has to either acquiesce and capitulate to Donald Trump, or his people are going to start turning on him at some point in time. I mean, one thing that the U.S. Navy does out there is it actually forms an embargo on Venezuela. Is that a lot of the shipping and trafficking of Venezuela goods and services leaving Venezuela, the oil primarily, which are already sanctioned, are being halted. So Venezuela can only last so long economically without selling illicit oil under U.S. sanctions to China. And this pisses China off as well. And then there's other rumors out there of nuclear weapons and submarines, and I think there's truth and speculation in all of that. I don't know which part is true. I'm actually trying to confirm some details. But I think that what we're seeing in Russia right now was actually, probably China, the U.S., and Russia privately, secretly meeting directly on this, talking about all of this and how to handle it and what's going on.
So before I take some questions, this will be my last one. So how are you feeling about the coming days, weeks ahead? Because we know, I mean, it's wild out there already. Things going to get a little bit more wild. But coming into 26 and, up to July 4th, the 250 year anniversary, how are you feeling, Josh, about what's to come?
Oh, I feel fucking amazing. Listen,
Yay!
at the end of the day, the one thing to realize and understand is that America fails only if the people allow it to. Right? I mean, if a civil war broke out tomorrow, you would see, millions upon millions of Americans gathered in arms to secure our homeland. The left, I know there's a radical faction of the left out there. Their numbers are very, very small in comparison. I know that there's a lot of illegal immigrants, and there's a threat of what I would consider to be a firestorm type of event to occur. But you have to look at how Donald Trump is actually prepared directly for this. I mean, 20,000 troops still at the southern border. You have, 8,500 Marines in Puerto Rico. You have the U.S. Navy deployed in the Caribbean. All of those are U.S. military assets.
Oh, we lost you. Uh-oh. They zapped you. Are you there? They don't like what you're saying. You may have to go out and come back in, Josh. All right, everybody. We're gonna get to some questions here momentarily. I'd like to say hi to Carmen. What's up, girly? And for those of you that have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll get you in here to ask Josh your question. Go ahead, Josh.
Okay, I don't even remember where I was. I had full reception, full Wi-Fi.
No, they were zapping you. But no, go ahead.
Yeah, like I was saying, I forgot where I left off, but at the end of the day, we can have fears that things are going to happen, and you know what? They just might happen. We might have, this uprising of gangs and cartels and sleeper cells in the United States of America. But Trump has already pre-positioned the U.S. military, whether it's Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, the southern border, National Guard in various different states, to be instantly deployable anywhere in the United States of America within a matter of hours. That is something that in no other war front have we ever had.
So, and I agree with you 100%. So let's touch on that real quickly, since you touched on it a little bit about the sleeper cells, and because this is what is a lot that's being spewed out there about the fear, right? And it's kind of horrific if you listen to some of these people and the way they put it out there, which I think is absolute BS. But We know that they're out there, right? How do you think that's going to look? I mean, you're hearing people say go door to door, all that kind of stuff, like they did over there in Gaza, with when Hamas and Hezbollah did all that shit. Like, I mean, that's terrifying for people, right? What can you say to this?
What do you mean by door to door? As like if
Like
radical Islamics start going door to
yes,
door?
they're gonna go to neighborhoods, go door to door. They're gonna come in there and gonna harm you and your family. It's just gonna be blood in the street and all this kind of just BS that I don't subscribe to. I think it's just absolute. That's not where we need to be. We need to be trying to help people get out of that fear, right? So, but that's horrific.
It is horrific, and I mean, you know what? Is it a possibility? Um, Listen, you will well know before that time frame if shit is happening. The reason I say that is because this isn't a third world country like most of the wars that we fought overseas. If you have an uprising within our country of, let's say, these radical Islamic terrorist groups that we know are here that are sleeper cells, or even Tren de Aragua or cartels, what you're going to see is you're going to see groups of them. They're going to go out there. They're going to produce an active shooter type of situation with probably 5, 10, 15 shooters in a certain part of the city, which is going to produce an all-call situation for the police and law enforcement. Immediately after, 911 communication systems will go down, and then other groups of 5 to 20 will deploy across the city, taking over command and control infrastructure, taking over water, taking over electricity, taking over communications. They'll take over National Guard armories and police stations. Okay, that's the first part of what they would do. And then they would take over functioning command centers. So they would take over FEMA. They would take over local government organizations. They would take over state government organizations because their objective isn't to massive impact of violence. Their whole objective would be to take over that state, to take over that city. And so we have to look at it a little bit differently because warfare changes with your geolocation. And so before they ever start going door to door or anything like that, you would be well aware, well armed, and probably already formed in a militia. At least that's my perspective.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate it. Yeah, we gotta snub these people out there putting out that absolute terror out there because I've had a lot of
That's
audience
the first
members.
I've heard of it. I mean, them going door to door.
Yeah, no, I've had some of my audience members reach out to me, say they've listened to podcasts or heard in whether it be chat rooms or in comment boxes, this type of thing happening, and they're trying to get people to wake up, right? So this is not how to do it. So thank you, I appreciate that a lot. All right, everybody, we're gonna go ahead and go to questions. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. Blue, go ahead and ask your question, and then we can go to Anastasia. Go ahead, Blue.
I'll use the 30-minute rule so that way we can go on to the hands. The 30-second rule is basically, and we have a 1-minute rule so that way we can get through hands and we can get through questions. So the 30 seconds is, well, yeah, I did not know that they were going door to door. I'm going to one-up you one there, Josh. And who's funding all this? Arabella Advisors. Arabella Advisors, not only, you got to get rid of the cartel. In order to get rid of the cartel, you have to get rid of the mob. You got to get rid of the cabal. If you see where the money is going, when you look at Arabella, you'll see all this. And then when you look at the mafia, the mob, what is the name that came in the news that was in the mob that hasn't been seen in 100 years? Gambino. Gambino family was a part of this whole entire racketeering because they went after the NBA. Because we always said sports are rigged. What's going on in Venezuela? Votes. Our votes are being rigged. It's great that you mentioned sleeper cells because not everybody talks about sleeper cells. And well, how come our states are all messed up? Because we have sleeper cells that are distorting the voting system. Well, you want to know what? ICE wants to come in, clean out everything. That's why Trump is sitting there talking about, Minnesota and everything else. Why hasn't he mentioned New York? Why was there a shooting of 2 National Guards in D.C. after Trump went to a dinner and said, see, DC is safe.
This is my response to the sedition. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, go for it, Josh. Go for it.
Well, Arabella Advisors is one part of a much, much bigger infrastructure, right? When you follow the money legally, you have what's called dark money channels. Dark money channels are basically what help to kind of fund things through proxy organizations legally without any exposure. The money that we're actually seeing fund a lot of these operations come from the illicit drug, human trafficking, and arms trafficking. This falls back onto the United Kingdom. It falls back onto MI6 and the deep state intelligence apparatus. And, when we start to understand who's controlling these networks, and how their money actually comes about. An interesting part there, talking about the money. Jeffrey Epstein. The reason why they don't want to release the majority of the stuff on Jeffrey Epstein, I've talked in depth about the biowarfare campaigns that he was actually funding, but there's something else that's more intricate to national security. And that is that Jeffrey Epstein was basically a handler for very, very wealthy people and individuals for intelligence agencies, whether it was MI6, CIA, Mossad. It didn't matter. But he basically helped them to move money through illegal channels to legitimate channels. That's how he made all of his money. He would take money from human trafficking operations or drug trafficking or arms trafficking operations, and he was the middle manager who would get that into strategic investments that were legitimate, that would pay back interest and basically launder that money, clean that money over and around. And within this, there was an aspect of control that he had and influence over a lot of these people. That's how the deep state intelligence apparatus actually operates. Is through illicit money, illicit funding, and funding various terrorist organizations and allowing them to rise up, getting them the proper armaments and so forth, and keeping people in third world countries in terror by controlling their governments and their leaders, and then controlling their resources. And then their parent companies will come in there and absorb all the resources, and they'll make billions off of that. So it's this system that is at the core, in the center, that the globalists seek to protect, while Trump seeks to expose.
I think we lost some folks on what Arabella Advisors is. Can you please explain to the room what is Arabella Advisors and what? Yeah, thank you.
Well, Arabella Advisors, excuse me, it's a dark money fund, if you want to look at it like that. So I think his name's Eric Kessler, is the head of the one who founded it. It's a for-profit consulting firm out of Washington, D.C. They have direct ties to George Soros, Bill Gates, and many other globalists. They've primarily funded through various different ventures that they've created. A few of them, Hopewell Fund, 1630 Fund, everybody remembers that one, New Venture Fund. All of these fund radical social action campaigns, whether it's green energy, whether it's uh, diversity, equity, inclusion, ESG, which is the top component of DEI, which is environmental social governance, basically bringing about the globalist agenda. And they've been at the heart and matter of Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ communities and Antifa in the context of funding.
Thank you, Josh. All right, Anastasia, go ahead. Your mic is unmuted.
Thank you. Hi, Josh. When I see like Mark Warner going on, saying the things he's saying, and Mark Kelly on every news media speaking out that they're allowing him to speak out. And what did they do to Trump when he was actually running for president? They put a gag order on him and tried to arrest him immediately and put him in court, so keep him away from the campaign. They were able to do all of this. I want to know if you know exactly what's happening with the seditious six, and if you have any inside information about what the plan is, because the real problem is, and we all know this, the media is one of the biggest problems, and Trump's been saying that for many years, the enemy of the people, and it's absolutely true. You know, I live in California. I still talk to people who think
This is my
that the ICE is arresting, U.S. citizens because they say it on the media, and then you know how they do that. They get a narrative going, they get a phrase going, and then people just repeat it, even though it got debunked or whatever. They're still talking about that the illegal that they tried to kill these people on these boats, like the Venezuelan drug traffickers. The fact that, the I mean, I just have so much to say. I'm just like, you know, that people are allowed to go out there on the media, on television, and say these things is just mind blowing. And it's one of our biggest problems. So, Josh, I have so much to say, but just tell us, do you know what they're going to do about Mark Kelly and all these other seditious, even the senators that are saying these things? Thank you.
Good question. I appreciate it. And it was like I was talking about with Alexander Vidman earlier. Is him and Mark Kelly are both retired U.S. military officers, which means that they still fall under the jurisdiction of the UCMJ. And so my speculation is that at minimum, Mark Kelly, we already know, has an investigation opened up into him. He could easily be called back to active duty and face a court martial, get a reduction in rank, even get prison time. I think that this type of reaction from the Trump administration needs to happen. Needs to happen. Not only that, is that uh, there's investigations being opened directly into the seditious six by Congress. And what they're going to look at is not necessarily the people involved, but where the money funding came from and who the organizers of this were. And because that goes back to them. And now you have more people, a conspiracy that's organized within, 18 USC 2357. So I think that if the Trump administration wants to make a point, they need to prosecute all of these individuals involved, including the people that funded it, produced it, and organized it. And then first thing they need to do is immediately go out there and reprimand these military officers who are retired who said these things. If they don't do anything, then I have other speculations on what's really happening.
Do you think that a color revolution could actually be carried out here in the United States? Because, we see police officers in Minnesota telling Somalis, how to, that the states, these Democrat states, are actually on the side of, as we know, the criminals, and they're just fighting us at every turn in all of these states. And then we have these senators even coming out now. Do you think that could actually happen?
No, most of the citizens are pussy ass bitches that don't actually know what
Hang on a
liberty
second,
means.
Max. Hang on. There's an order here. Hang on. Go ahead, Josh. You can respond to
Yeah.
that.
So let me help with that. It's not if a color revolution is going to happen. The color revolution is already happening. It is already well underway and into multiple phases. That is already occurring right now. The question is what do we do about it?
I think I'm at the last phase where they actually remove the president. Do you think that could actually happen?
I think that we're a long ways away from that. If I was a betting man, with knowing that we're coming into December, it's the cold season. It's probably going to be a good 6 months before they probably throw all of their ammunition at Donald Trump. They want to do it at the highest point of Donald Trump's presidency, which would be the 250th anniversary of the United States. And so March, April, May timeframe of next year would be when they kind of take to the streets, begin their big protests, get people, rioting, paid rioters, agitators, all of that type of stuff that kind of really foments that color revolution. That would be around that time period. Right now, it's about building the sentiment through psychological warfare and psyacs and psyops.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Anastasia. All right. See Pat Fish. Go ahead. Your mic is unmuted. Go ahead.
Hey guys. Hey Josh. Great to hear from you. So do you see some encouraging news? The encouraging news that they signed today was getting rid of the automobile green scam. And then the other encouraging news, which we've seen the last couple of weeks, is you have these huge donors that are donating to the ballroom. And then yesterday, that unique couple that's donating to the America's Act. Now, if we were to go back and link that to, is it possible that it's from EO 13848 and 13818, where ill-gotten gains through ill-gotten fraudulent and or dark monies are going to be paid back? And then they're put up on stage to show that they're doing this as these generous donors. Maybe that's a little bit of capitulation. Would you agree with any of that?
So I don't know if I would go to the extent that it's from the executive order from Trump's first administration that people involved in human trafficking operations can have all their assets seized, all of that stuff. I would say more that, number one, Michael Dell. Michael Dell hasn't been a name that comes up in a lot of conspiracy circuits because I don't think that there's too much of a conspiracy surrounding Michael Dell. But on the other hand, you get people like Bill Gates, who removes their money from Arabella Advisors on the day that he's meeting with Donald Trump. You get Intel that, a week before Trump met with Intel CEO, Trump was talking that the guy needs to be deported because he's corroborating with China. And then he comes back and gives the United States of America 10% interest in their company. I think that it's a lot of Donald Trump just in negotiating deals, that when you start to look at the global infrastructure in the context of how the New World Order was being formulated, you have to take into consideration that there's factions and each faction has their own ideology, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the reason why they're with what we would consider to be the globalists or the Illuminati or the cabal, the reason why they're aligning with them is not out of alignment. It's out of necessity. It's out of survival. And that when you have someone else that comes up and begins to threaten that infrastructure and dismantle their power base, those other factions become freed to do whatever they want. And what we're seeing is a lot of those factions actually aligning with Donald Trump.
Thank you, Josh. All right, let's see. Relay, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
All right, hey guys. Josh, got a statement, then a question, then I'll drop down. The statement is, do you find? Well, I just find it interesting that the MAGA / media is now in the Pentagon, which is a good thing when all this is going to ramp up. Laura Loomer's already exposing shit from the Pentagon, trying to run the coup on Hedsig. So I just thought that was a great thing. It's a big change, and I think that's going to help the Trump admin having some back with, I think, Posovic's in there. I saw fucking the investigator guy was there also. Can't remember, his name's went blank. All right, my question is, do you think, am I crazy to think that soon as we get Venezuela wrapped up, and this is just my thinking, as soon as we get Venezuela wrapped up, then we'll start the arrest on corruption here in America? Because I really think it's all tied to the cartel, has been for 20, 30 years, just similar how it was with the mafia. So I think that's when we'll start seeing arrests for politicians. What's your thoughts?
I think that it's going to be an ongoing process over the next 4 years. I don't think that, we're going to see, well, I hope that we see one big operation, one fell swoop, where, within a 30-day time period, everything comes tumbling down on their house of cards. I hope that's what we see. But I think that, this is going to be ongoing over the next 4 to 8 years in the context of investigations. And we got to remember how the DOJ operates. They operate very, very slow and lethargic. And, when you have a million a few 100,000 employees underneath your belt, things don't move
Tell
very
that to
fast.
Panama in 1992.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, we can absolutely just eliminate the leadership of Venezuela one by one, like we did in Panama. Nobody knows that war because they're too stuck up with all the Bushes.
Max, can Jason can he finish?
It's absolutely
John
ridiculous. It
finish,
doesn't
please?
take us 2 years to eliminate the power structure of Venezuela. We can do it with 8 bullets.
Okay, I'm gonna mute you once. Let
Yeah,
Josh
he's a
finish,
disruptor.
please.
I've dealt with
I
him
got it,
before.
Adam. Yep, Josh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Josh.
Well, on the comments there, you're right. How long would it take us to defeat Venezuela? You're looking at maybe 24 hours for complete domination over Venezuela, and then maybe a 3 to 6 month campaign. But that depends on the mission, goals, and criteria. What is the objective? Is the objective to take out the cartel's infrastructure? It'll be over in 24 hours. That's a bombing campaign. Is the objective to overthrow Maduro and install Machado? Well, then maybe you're looking at a longer campaign. Is the Venezuelan military even going to attempt to take on the United States of America, or are they going to lay down their arms? I think that most of them would lay down their arms and capitulate. I don't see that the Venezuela quote unquote conflict would last longer than a week at max. You have more naval power in that region than we ever did at any point in time during any of the Middle Eastern or Gulf War conflicts. And Donald Trump will absolutely fire missiles from every single ship at various different targets in that region. So the Venezuelan conflict isn't going to last very long. And I think that's one of the reasons Donald Trump is playing this, because he's given them the benefit of the doubt. Like, capitulate, you son of a bitch. Like, just give up. It's over. It's done with. This has already been over. And that really the globalists and Venezuela and their puppet masters are just slow to learn that.
Thank you, Josh. How you doing on time, Josh?
I gotta go. It's 6 o'clock. I gotta show prep dinner for the kids, so I do have to go right now.
Okay. All right, everybody. Josh, he was giving me 45 minutes. But he gave us an extra 15 minutes. So everybody, we'll get Josh back on here. And thanks for being here. Hang in there, everybody. Head up and stay positive. Stay out of the noise, everybody.
Where we
Thanks.
go one, we go all.
Thank,
Right,
All right,
Benny?
guys.
thanks,
Much love.
Josh.
Take care. God
Thanks,
bless.
Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
God bless.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.